Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Any doubt from the last class? Much. Power and authority. Power always involves force. क्योंकि पावर का डेफिनेशन क्या है? अगेंस्ट अदर्स. भाई पावर का मतलब फोर्स है, बट जब उसी फोर्स को अप्रूवल मिल जाए तो वो कंसेंट बन गया है. इट इज नो लॉन्गर फोर्स. आप समझ रहे हो भाई? सीधी सी बात है. वाइस चांसलर ऑफ यूनिवर्सिटी इज अ फोर्स इन हिमसेल्फ, बट वी कंसेंट टू हिज फोर्स बिकॉज वी सी हिम एज अथॉरिटी. नाउ यू थिंक लाइक दिस, इफ द स्टूडेंट यूनियन डिसाइड्स व्हाट शुड बी द सिलेबस, ओके, वर्सेस वीसी डिसाइडिंग व्हाट शुड बी द सिलेबस, हु विल यू गिव कंसेंट टू? वीसी. क्यों? फोर्स तो दोनों ने किया. देखो, फोर्स दोनों ने किया, लेकिन आपने कंसेंट किसको दिया? वीसी, बिकॉज ही इज द अथॉरिटी फॉर दिस. स्टूडेंट यूनियन इज नॉट द अथॉरिटी फॉर दिस. फोर्स सब लोग करते हैं, बस हम कंसेंट कुछ को दे देते हैं. अथॉरिटी मींस ओबेयंस और कंसेंट. इट इंप्लाइज कंसेंट. पावर इज इंप्लाइंग फोर्स. व्हेन द फोर्स इज गिवन कंसेंट, इट बिकम्स अथॉरिटी. एज सिंपल एज दैट. ओके, सो तभी हमने पढ़ा था अथॉरिटी मींस all forms of power which are given legitimacy, which is approval. Okay, so yesterday we were reading forms of authority: traditional authority, charismatic authority, and then legal rational. हो गया था legal rational. Okay, हाँ, उसके फॉर्म्स भी करेंगे हम. Now what is legal rational authority? इसको समझते हैं. Traditional authority is the one who we give consent to or who we obey on the basis of traditions and customs. We are not obeying our father because he is charismatic figure. Okay, I mean he could be fine. रोज रोज थोड़ा charisma दिखेगा पापा में. एक बार भी क्या दिखा तभी हो गया, थोड़ा रोज रोज charisma दिखता रहेगा उनके अंदर. But eventually he becomes authority because it is just believed that we should be obeying our parents. Okay. Charismatic authority is the one who we obey purely because of the charisma in the individual. Okay. Father is not individual. Father is position. आप एक लड़का हो जो एक दिन पिता बनेगा. पिता क्या है? पोजीशन. लड़का पोजीशन नहीं है. लड़का इज नॉट पोजीशन. लड़की इज नॉट पोजीशन. माता इज पोजीशन. मदरहुड इज अ पोजीशन. सेक्रेड पोजीशन. ठीक है, नॉट जस्ट अ सेक्रेड पोजीशन. ओके, बट कैरिज्मेटिक अथॉरिटी, irrespective of whatever position he holds, he is just charismatic. ओके, उल्टा उस कुर्सी के चार चांद निकल जाएंगे जिस कुर्सी में वो बैठेंगे. ठीक है, उनके साथ ऐसा है. फाइन. सो charismatic authority is beyond position. He has charisma beyond position. Legal rational authority is the one who we obey or comply with, not because of some traditional customs, not because of the charisma of the individual, but because of the rules and regulation, written rules and regulations specifically of the administration of the constitution of the law. If you look into university, why do we obey what our HOD tells us? Because according to rules and regulation, according to written rules and regulation and the constitution of the department of economics or sociology, he is the authority, the final chair. Okay, why do we obey vice chancellor, registrar? Because rule bound, rule regulation bound administration है ये. Okay, not because of charisma necessarily. Some of them could be charismatic, not to deny that. Okay, but mainly it is rules and regulation. Similarly, why should actor listen to director in a movie? Legal rational authority. Okay, director is the head of the project. Fine. And that project is very well written. Script is ready. Production house is there. He is appointed as the director of the movie. And the appointment is very well circulated among the actors that he will be directing you. That is why now you listen to director. Okay. Same is the case with UPSC. UPSC is the legal rational authority. Okay. So we have constitutional bodies are legal rational authorities. Even statutory bodies are legal rational authorities. HOD is the legal rational authority. Principal in the school, legal rational authority. Teachers in the school, legal rational authority. Okay. Teachers in the coaching institution, legal rational authority. Okay. Teachers in university, legal rational authority. Okay. Now, how should we write this? We will say a form of authority which is obeyed or given legitimacy on the basis of written rules and regulations which are well codified and standardized. Well codified and standardized. Okay. Okay. So you remain the Chief Justice of India for how many months or years? As per the condition of the individual. If you have become Chief Justice of India at a certain age, beyond which you have only 4 or 5 months left to get retired, so you will stay as CJI for 4 or 5 months only, because it is very well codified, standardized that you can't be CJI after this age. Very well codified. After which Chief Justice Chandrachud will not be obeyed. When he was Chief Justice, he was not just legal rational authority, he was charismatic also to many people. Okay, उसके बाद का शायद नाम किसी बात नहीं, मैं तो भूल गया नाम. Whosoever became Chief Justice of India after Chandrachud, I forgot his name. I think Sanjeev Khanna. Okay, not so charismatic maybe. Okay, to me not so, but to you or to somebody else he could be charismatic. Okay, it is always very subjective, but to everyone he was legal rational authority, and the previous one was also legal rational authority. Okay, so form of authority is obeyed, given legitimacy on the basis of written rules and regulations. Now, इसके examples क्या-क्या हो सकते हैं? यूनिवर्सिटी में कौन होगा? Professors, which includes assistant and associate professors. Okay, similarly HOD, VC, C, ठीक है, chancellor, and many other rector, proctor, registrar, सब जो सब होते हैं. Okay. लीगल रैशनल अथॉरिटी, ये तो यूनिवर्सिटी की बात होगी. उसी तरह एट द लेवल ऑफ स्टेट, गवर्नर, चीफ मिनिस्टर, सेक्रेटरी, chief secretary, principal secretary, not just chief or principal, even the lower administration is also legal action authority. Okay. Group B, group C, group D, सब legal action authority हैं. ठीक है, ऐसा नहीं है सिर्फ टॉप की बात करेंगे. All are legal action authorities. Okay. क्योंकि सबका appointment was based on written rules, merit, well standardized. उनका tenure भी एक standardized है. इतने साल तक सर्व करेंगे. Fine. And all of them are serving as long as they are complying with law. Beyond which they can't. Fine. So all of them are law bound. ये सब के सब law bound है. समझ गए आप? ठीक है ना? Charismatic authority is not law bound. वो law से ऊपर है. सबसे ऊपर है. गांधी जी, कोई law नहीं उन्होंने ऐसा छोड़ा जिसको उन्होंने ना तोड़ा. सारे लॉ तोड़ दिए उन्होंने. उसके बावजूद भी he had support of people, mass support. समझ रहे हो? मतलब he is above law, he is above everything. Okay. और जब बात आती है फादर की, मदर की, ये पोजीशंस हैं. Very much like these positions are bound by written rules and regulations. Those positions are bound by customs. सीधी सी बात है. Okay. When you violate custom, do you go to court? But when you violate law, you go to court. आप समझ रहे हो? If by chance you had fight with father, will you go to court? Will it be contempt of family? No, it will not. ऐसा कुछ. But if you had fight with judge, it will be contempt. फिर आपको आना पड़ेगा दोबारा से. ठीक है, फर्क है. देख रहे हो ह्यूमन क्या क्या करते हैं अर्थ पे. ठीक है, सेम एक्शन के कितने अलग अलग कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस हो रहे हैं, हम नोट करते जा रहे हैं सब. ओके. सो मैक्स वेबर क्या बोलते हैं? वेबर सेज दैट इफ यू लुक इनटू द हिस्ट्री ऑफ यूरोप, बिकॉज़ एवरीबॉडी इज कंसर्न्ड अबाउट हिस्ट्री ऑफ यूरोप फर्स्ट, राइट? द वेव ऑफ मॉडर्नाइजेशन हैज प्लेड इमेंस रोल in transforming the forms of authority that we are going to have in the coming times. In the coming times, we will have more and more which form of authority? Legal rational authority. And we will see decline of which form? Traditional. That means the rule of king and queens will be declining. The rule of prime minister, advisor will be arriving. ये क्या हो रहा है? पैटर्न देखने को मिल रहा है. यानी कि क्या बदला? आप ये सोचो, सिंपल सी बात है. The rule of church declined. With modernization, rule of church declined or not? Who took over the rule of church? Independent nation state, the French Republic, is now making the decision, is now making the law. Earlier, the laws were made by church officials in alliance with king. But today we see prime minister separate, judge separate. Prime minister not taking any consultation with church officials. And church is no longer making the law. And that means the way we used to obey church earlier, the same form of obedience is not going to be there, at least in certain areas. In the law, in the legislation business, church has no role. Even if church says something, we will not comply. We will comply only with what the state has to legislate on. आप समझ गए? इसका मतलब ये हुआ, the form of or the pattern of command and obedience changed. आप समझ रहे हो चीज को? The pattern of command and obedience changed. Earlier, who used to be in command? Traditional authority. And how we used to obey them? On the basis of traditions, customs. Now we see which authority coming in? Legal rational. On what basis are we obeying? Rules and regulations. Pattern change हो गया ना? सही बात है. Okay. Earlier, who were the advisors in the rule of Maurya? Gupta. Who were the advisors? Who were the principal secretary or the chief secretary of those times? Priests say. And those priests were coming from which community? Brahmins. Priests and Brahmin priests. यार मतलब शिद्दत है वैसे देखा जाए तो, है ना, कि somehow you made your way to that class seat. मतलब क्योंकि क्या होता है, ऐसी होता है कभी-कभी ना, you get conscious कि यार एकदम ऐसा भीड़ में जगह बनाना अपने लिए, इतने लोगों की नजरें एक साथ ले जाना, ये भी अचीवमेंट होती है. बट उसके बियॉन्ड जाकर बिना उस फियर के उस सीट तक पहुंच जाना, ये काबिल तारीफ. ठीक है. एनीवे, हाँ यार, नहीं यार ऐसे मत करो यार. ठीक है, नहीं है, नहीं सही में. तो यार देखो ऐसा है कि ना, जो मेन चीज है उस पर आ जाते हैं. जो मैं आई वाज ट्राइंग टू टेल यू कि जो ट्रेडिशनल अथॉरिटीज हैं, they are declining. Brahmins used to be the advisors during the times of Maurya and Gupta. Okay. Today, who are the advisors? During the times of our Prime Minister, Principal Secretary, Chief Secretary. Which community are they coming from? समझ गए ना आप? Based on merit. ठीक है. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? Written rules and regulations will decide who will be the Chief Secretary. Earlier, written rules and regulations were not deciding this. In fact, customs were deciding who will be the advisor. Earlier, we used to listen to चाणक्य. अब चाणक्य की नहीं सुनेंगे हम. अब हम किसकी सुनेंगे? हमें छात्र चलो ठीक है, ठीक. अब हम सुनेंगे अपने कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी की. जब आप आईएएस ऑफिसर बनोगे तो आप कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी सुनोगे. सारी इन्फॉर्मेशन वहीं से आ रही है ना, सारा फ्लो वहीं से हो रहा है. चाणक्य कोई आएगा आपको बोलेगा, आप नहीं सुनने वाले उसकी. ठीक है. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू ओबे एनी फिलोसोफर और इंटेलेक्चुअल, यू विल ओबे ओनली योर कैबिनेट सेक्रेटरी. एंड दैट टू व्हेन यू सी दैट इन रिटन फॉर्म, यू विल आस्क द पर्सन, रिटन में क्या लिखा है? मेरे पास ईमेल नहीं आया अभी तक. ओके. अच्छा, व्हेन यू फाइनली सी द रिटन फॉर्म, देन यू विल से स्टैम्प नहीं लगा इसके ऊपर. अच्छा, व्हेन यू फाइनली सी द स्टैम्प फॉर्म, देन यू विल से ग्रीन कलर से होता है उनका तो, बट ये तो ब्लैक से है. अल्टीमेटली सो मच रूल बाउंड यू हैव बिकम. ओके. इफ द अदर पर्सन विल टेल यू टू डू समथिंग, देन यू विल ओपन योर लॉ बुक, then you'll see according to which section I can do this. You can't do anything out of will, right? You have to look into section. So overall, Weber says that we see with modernization, decline of traditional authority. The realm of traditional authority is in its decline, and the realm of legal rational authority is on the rise. This is what he says. Okay. This does not mean that legal rational authority will have no trait of traditions, will have no trait of charisma. He may have some of that, but the majority reason for him to be appointed was written rules and regulations. आप समझ गए? तो एक लाइन लिखते हैं. Weber argues, when European society underwent changes, comma, the forms of authority also changed. Forms of authority also changed. The realm of REALM, 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 the realm of traditional authority is gradually declining. And the realm of legal rational authority is on the rise. Okay. Fine. Now you will understand other details of these forms of authority. I'll start with traditional authority first. Okay, उसके details में थोड़ा जाएंगे हम. Forms of traditional authority. First is gerontocracy. Okay. Second is patriarchalism. And third is patrimonialism. Gerontocracy, patriarchalism, patrimonialism. Okay. We'll start with gerontocracy first. You must have heard the word geriatrics. Okay. जो सीनियर होते हैं, सीनियर ओल्ड एज लोग, उनके ट्रीटमेंट के लिए अलग ब्रांच होती है. ओके. Gerontocracy means the rule of seniors. Cracy का मतलब होता है rule. Cracy means rule. Geronto means GER is a root word for seniors. Okay. Now rule of seniors basically Weber says that in any setting we see most of the times senior men who are 60 plus, maybe 65 plus, okay, with white beard, okay, having command over positions, over decision making. Okay. We see in panchayats historically who have been the sarpanch. Senior men. Pattern है. Humans में pattern लिखा है. Okay. Senior men, white beard, white suit, okay, are ruling, making decision, deciding whether whatever you have done, whether you're right or wrong. Okay. And there is no one senior man. Sometimes it is 3, 4, sometimes it is 5, sometimes it is 10. Okay, it could be any. But eventually it is the rule of senior. You don't see 16-year boy or 22-year boy sitting with those seniors and making decision. Do you see that? No. Yeah, okay. So that is what we call as traditional authority. So write down gerontocracy implies rule of seniors. It is the form of authority in which men who are defined socially as old, men who are defined socially as old, okay, dominate the decision making process. Dominate the decision making process. Example, village panchayat, जाति पंचायत. ये सुना आपने? What is the difference between village panchayat and jati panchayat? In jati panchayat, you see whatever is the decision is applicable on whole members of the same caste. So it is adjudication on the matters related to that case, that caste specifically. Village consists of multiple caste groups. Whatever village council decides will be applicable to every caste. But whatever caste council decides is applicable only to that caste. But in both the panchayats, there is senior man. This is common to both. Okay. And the senior man is not chosen by you. You did not choose. Neither you chose the sarpanch, nor you chose the caste sarpanch. Okay. How did they get power then? Traditions, customs, because it is acceptable. The ones who are the senior most socially defined as old मतलब कि mature भी हैं. ऐसा नहीं कि सिर्फ 60 हो गए तो चलो. Okay, socially mature also. Okay, socially who are defined as old are seniors. They automatically take power in their hands. Okay, the ones whose decisions are seen as wise decisions, authoritative decisions, lion-like decisions, who once have taken their decision will not take back their decisions, are the ones who actually take the position of sarpanch. पर जो आदमी अपनी decision बार-बार बदलता है, उसको सरपंची कभी नहीं मिलती. आप समझ गए? ठीक है, तो उसको देखा जा रहा है यहाँ पे. अच्छा, but not just जाति पंचायत and village पंचायत. There are other examples. Oldest form of what we call as democracy was actually gerontocracy only. जिसको ग्रीक डेमोक्रेसी कहते हैं, एथेनियन डेमोक्रेसी, वो सब क्या था? गेरोंटोक्रेसी ओनली. ओके. You must have heard the word sabhas, samitis, है ना? Sabhas, samitis में we never had parliament or legislative assembly. We initially had sabhas and samitis. Who were running the sabhas and samitis? Not women, not young women. तो फिर और भी खत्म हो गया. कौन? Young man भी नहीं, old man. एक ट्रेड दिख रहा है हमें. sabhas samitis में old man है. Understood this? Okay. अच्छा, उसको भी लिख लो आगे एग्जांपल में, along with जाति पंचायत, comma, Athenian and Greek democratic structures. Athenian, ATHEN. IAN, because Athenian model is seen as the oldest model of democracy. Okay, Athenian and Greek democratic structures. Fine. Democratic structures. Fine. Now next is patriarchalism. The literal meaning of patriarchalism. Patri means father or father-like. एक ही, ठीक है? Father or father-like. Calism. बात वही रूल ही है, but father or father-like figure is ruling the household. Household. That is what we call as patriarchalism. घर को चलाने वाला कौन है? एक होता है गांव चलाने वाले सरपंच, जाति चलाने वाले सरपंच, घर चलाने वाले father. Okay. Weber says this is the oldest form of authority, of course. Oldest form. When there was no sarpanch, there was some father-like figure who was dictating everybody. Okay. So it refers to authority of father or husband or senior most member of the household. Senior most member, father, husband or senior most member of the household. मेल हो तो obviously मेल ही है वहां पे, ठीक है. Now the question is why male? Okay. हम पढ़ी हो रहे हैं traditional authority, customs. See, if I talk about one example, okay, because we need to understand why men's rule is part of custom. Okay. See, the fact is that even if I talk about Hinduism as a belief system, okay, in Hinduism, on death of the father, it is the male who's going to perform the last rites. Fine. That is what we call as vansh. Vansh का मतलब is not lineage. Vansh means patrilineage. मतलब male lineage. Vansh is Sanskrit term. Okay. Male lineage is called as vansh. Okay. Similarly, on occasion of marriage, women has to leave her natal place, join husband's place. Okay. And husband is treated as equivalent to God, Pati Parmeshwar. Okay. So these things somehow established according to text. I'm not saying this is right. I'm just saying how it became a custom because religious texts have promoted these things. Okay. Feminist literature would question these texts, which we will study later on. Okay. But anyway, Weber argues that patriarchalism is one of the oldest form of authority. The history begins with patriarchalism. The history begins with patriarchalism. Okay. And last point. The patriarch rules without staff. ये बड़ी interesting line है. Patriarch rules without staff or administration. Okay. मतलब को फादर को घर चलाने के लिए ऑफिसर्स की जरूरत नहीं है, वही ऑफिसर है. There is no staff or administration. Okay. Now last is patrimonialism. Okay. See, when you have to run family or household, you see a father or father-like figure. But if you have to run gang or empire or state, then father-like figure is definitely required, but he will also require staff and administration. क्योंकि gang बिना administration के नहीं चलता. उसमें भी एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन लगता है, उसमें भी हायरार्की ब्यूरोक्रेसी गैंग में भी होती है. रिपोर्ट करना है कितना टाइम किया आज, ठीक है. इट हैज टू बी रिपोर्टेड वेरी वेल. ओके. अ चेन ऑफ कमांड विल बी देयर टॉप डाउन. वहां से आया है, बॉम्बे से ऑर्डर आया है इसका, ठीक है, शूट का. ओके. सो वहां से आया तो फिर तो करना पड़ेगा. ओके. सो गैंग आल्सो हैज एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन, empire has administration, state has administration. So patrimonialism is nothing but patriarchalism at level beyond family and household. Okay, which includes bigger level. Write down. Patrimonialism is patriarchalism at the level of clan, gang, at the level of clan, CLAN, gang, GNG, or empire. Here, it is necessary for the patriarch to rely on some form of administration. To rely on some form of administration. Okay. अब ये बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट है हमारे लिए समझना. Where do you see administration out of these three? Only here. That means where do you see bureaucracy out of these three? Only here. यानी पहली bureaucracy कैसी रही होगी? Traditional bureaucracy, patrimonial bureaucracy. Now we are going to briefly understand what is patrimonial bureaucracy. Okay. That means we have staff or administration, but the staff and administration is the personal property of the master. Which means what? Like IAS officers today are not personal property of the Prime Minister or President. उनके personal property नहीं है. No IAS officer is the personal property of Chief Minister or Prime Minister. You are given independence by virtue of constitutional provisions. But in those times, there was no independence. You were chosen by the master, the patrimonial authority or the patriarch. You were fired by the master at his will. इसको बोलते हैं spoil system बोला जाता है इसको. Like in USA, Trump is choosing who will be the secretary. Okay. Personally, he could be anyone. He could be businessman. Okay. He could be any person. He could be professor. He could be businessman. कोई written rule ऐसा कुछ नहीं है कि कोई merit based system. हाँ merit है, but कोई exam नहीं है. There is no exam to become the advisor per se. Okay. So many businessmen have actually become part of the Trump administration. Okay. Same was the case in those times. Secondly, there was no separation between public and private. That means whosoever were officers were using the public office for private gains as well. That means there was no concept of corruption in those days. आज corruption किसको बोलते हैं? हाँ. The moment ऐसा हमने देखा जब हमारे से तो पता चला हमें when we were reading newspaper that officers, some officers were called as corrupt. Then we tried to understand what is corrupt and why are they called corrupt. Then we found out that cash was found at his home. The cash was supposed to be delivered to some other people who were beneficiary of the welfare program. But the cash was found at his home. That means beneficiary did not get benefit. That is why humans call it corrupt. Okay, but this kind of things were existing even in ancient societies, but they were not called as corrupt. Okay, because there was no rule or law as such well codified. There was no CVC, Central Vigilance Commission. There was no officer IPS who was specially appointed in CVC to look after corruption cases committed by the bureaucrats, group ABC. इतना standardized system पहले नहीं होता था. Okay. सो द आइडिया इज वेरी सिंपल. ब्यूरोक्रेसी पहले भी थी बट वैसे नहीं थी जैसी आज है. ओके, एक लाइन लिखते हैं. The administration formed what we can call as patrimonial bureaucracy. The administration formed what we can call as patrimonial bureaucracy. Here, the administration and military were personal property of the master. The administration and military was personal property of the master. समझ लो. That means if Mughal emperor has to wage war, whole army of Mughal empire will listen to औरंगजेब. आप समझ लो. आज अगर वॉर पे जाना हो इंडिया को पाकिस्तान के अगेंस्ट, प्राइम मिनिस्टर की भी नहीं सुनेगी आर्मी, प्रेसिडेंट की भी नहीं सुनेगी, भले वो सुप्रीम कमांडर हो, जब तक लिखित नहीं आएगा. अगर प्रेसिडेंट बोलेगा सारे जनरल्स को मिलकर यार वॉर करो, एक मिसाइल अपनी तरफ से, नहीं सुनने वाले बोलेंगे सर हमको रिटर्न में चाहिए. फिर वो बोल रहा है प्रेसिडेंट बट आई हैव लक्ष्मीकांत पॉलिटी इन माय हैंड एंड क्लियरली द बुक सेज आई एम द सुप्रीम कमांडर. बट वो क्या बोलेंगे सर बट देयर आर सुप्रीम रूल्स एज वेल. And the rule says that you must inform the same to defense ministry, home ministry, वहां से home secretary, फिर defense secretary, who will then write a mail or notice which will be given to us through some official. The ministry of defense के defense minister से sign होकर आके आएगा. Ultimately, we will pass on the same to other officers. तब जाके एक plan बनेगा. उसके बाद जाके we will execute. Rules है, regulations है. Yeah, that means if we have to wage war against Pakistan, it can't be done overnight because so many rules are there. It will take us at least 3-4 days. क्या मान के चलो 3-4 दिन में लगेंगे, हम एक दिन में शूट नहीं कर पाएंगे. ठीक है, unless कुछ emergency आ जाता. Okay, but rule bound system will not let us do that. But in those times, औरंगजेब ने बोल दिया है, चलो फिर, चलो, जहांगीर से आ गया है, क्या बोलते हैं उसको? हाँ, फरमान आ गया है. यस, फरमान आ गया है. अभी फरमान नहीं चलते, ठीक है ना, अभी रूल चलते हैं. सेकंड पॉइंट, द मंक्स, प्रीस्ट्स, लॉर्ड्स, द मंक्स, प्रीस्ट्स, लॉर्ड्स, LORDS, served as traditional bureaucrats. Served as traditional bureaucrats and formed traditional bureaucracy. Served as traditional bureaucrats and formed traditional bureaucracy. Their appointment was based on favoritism. Their appointment was based on favoritism. Oral instructions. Fine. Next point. These officials had no rights. And their privileges were subject to commands of leader. Their privileges were subject to commands of leader. Okay. क्या मतलब हुआ इसका? That leader, the Mughal emperor can decide उसको घर मिलेगा कि नहीं, कब तक मिलेगा, खुद emperor personally decide कर रहा है और फरमान जारी हो रहा है, घर ले लो उससे. Today, even if chief minister decides personally that you, the house that is allocated to you as an officer, that house should be taken away from you, he will not be able to do that. Okay. I mean he can, but it is not going to be so easy for him because eventually you will be allocated house. ऐसा तो नहीं कि आपको वो सीधा स्ट्रीट पे लाएगा, ऐसा हो नहीं पाएगा. If not this house, you will have to get some other house. And if you don't get any house, you can fight this case in the court and easily win. Okay, that means आज emperor की नहीं चलने वाली, rule bound system है. Understood? Okay. And last feature, there was no divide between public and private ends. It means what modern society people call as corruption. It means what the modern society people call as corruption did not exist in those days. Okay. Like if the common man had to meet the emperor, so the guards outside the castle of the emperor would ask the person, okay, you have to give these many sikkas, gold coins you must give to us first. Okay. That was not seen as corruption, that was seen as custom. वो परंपरा थी कि सिक्के देने हैं तब जाके मिलेंगे उनसे. अब आज कोई सिक्का मांगे, कोई ऑफिशियल, if he asks you कि सिक्का दो तब हम आपको मिलवाएंगे, तो that will be seen as corruption. और वो इंसान सिक्का लेते हुए वो हिंदू में आ जाएगा. ठीक है, उसको मॉडर्न सोसाइटी के करप्शन बोलते हैं, बट वो परंपरा थी. ओके, ब्राइबरी वाज कस्टम. दिस वाज ब्राइबरी वाज कस्टम, तो ब्राइबरी वर्ड नहीं यूज करते थे उसके लिए. ओके, एनीवे, सो दिस वाज द फॉर्म ऑफ ब्यूरोक्रेसी इन दोस डेज. अंडरस्टूड? ओके, यस. No, definitely women did used to exist. In the form of authority. See, the issue, what is the issue? Okay, the issue is women did exist even as leaders, definitely. The issue is that historical records do not suggest so. Why? Because women did not become historians. Okay, we had male historians describing the legacy of male emperors. हर एक बादशाह ने अपने पास एक historian chronicle रखा हुआ है जो उनकी तारीफें कर रहा है. Okay, and in that scenario, female historians are missing, female academicians are missing. Not to say that female leadership was not there, there must have been, but we require subaltern historian. Subaltern मतलब someone who would unravel or unearth the hidden history. What happened to what we call as dasis? Why do we only talk about dasas? लोग ये बोल सकते हैं. Whatever happened to dasis? An article written by Uma Chakrabarti, very nice article from JNU. Okay, dasis की बात कोई करता नहीं, dasas की बात करते हैं लोग. तो ऐसे तो वुमेन में भी ऐसे महारानियां रही हैं, बट महारानियों की हिस्ट्री कहाँ है? वो गायब है. महाराजा के साथ देखा गया उनको. ठीक है, बट उनके अपने एक्टिविटीज सबसाइडेड है in the written accounts. Okay, so now see what is that thing that we see here in traditional authority. When Weber says that in the modern times we see legal rational authority, he's actually talking about which form of bureaucracy coming in? Legal rational bureaucracy. Now that we already studied traditional bureaucracy, we must now study legal rational bureaucracy. Okay, and what are the features of legal rational bureaucracy? Exact opposite of these. What is the first feature of patrimonial bureaucracy? First feature, personal property of the master. The modern bureaucrats are not personal property of the master. The modern bureaucrats are not even loyal to master. The modern bureaucrats are loyal to constitution. In those days bureaucrats were loyal to master. फर्क आया कि नहीं आया? आया. पहले इंसान के साथ लॉयल थे, अब रूल के साथ लॉयल है. शिफ्ट हुआ कि नहीं पैटर्न में? और क्या सिर्फ इंडिया में हुआ? ऑल ओवर द वर्ल्ड हो रहा है पैटर्न में शिफ्ट. अंडरस्टूड दिस? ओके. सेकंड, व्हाट इज द रूल हियर? Monks and priests were appointed. Okay, do we see monks and priests appointment these days? We don't see monks and priests. And if by chance if any monk or priest is appointed, he becomes a news. इसका अपॉइंटमेंट कैसे हुआ? ओके, वो न्यूज बनता है. पहले न्यूज नहीं, पहले तो नॉर्म था, अब वो एबनॉर्मल है. अंडरस्टूड दिस? पैटर्न आप देखो. थर्ड लिखो, टीचर, अपॉइंटमेंट इज नॉट बेस्ड ऑन ओरल इंस्ट्रक्शंस. Appointment is based on written rules and merit. You become officer not because you're personal favorite of any minister. You become officer because your officership is very well protected, governed, standardized by constitutional bodies and statutory bodies. Okay, they have recommended you to be the right person to be the officer. Okay, merit based. And then next rule is no rights and privileges. Today officers have rights, certain rights they have. Okay, of course they don't have the same individual rights that we commoners possess. Like I have right to have my own YouTube channel and promote whatever I like. The officer may not have the same right. Okay, but he will have certain other rights which I will not have. Fine. He will also have certain privileges which I will not have. Fine. So those rights and privileges are well codified. एक बुक आती है इसकी, स्वामीज हैंडबुक, ऑफिसर्स बहुत यूज करते हैं. उसमें सब लिखा हुआ है क्या राइट्स और प्रिविलेजेस हैं ऑफिसर्स के. ठीक है, राइट टू से नो कब कब है ऑफिसर के पास. ओके, उस टाइम पे देयर वाज नो राइट टू से नो. फाइन, सो वो चीजें होती हैं. अच्छा, व्हाट इज द नेक्स्ट रूल? No divide between public and private. Today we have clear cut separation between public and private, which means the officers can't use the equipments in the office, the tools for personal benefits. No officer can bend the rule for personal gains. Suppose if the time to visit Taj Mahal is till 5 p.m. ऐसा मान लेते हैं, and it is rule, strict rule. बट ऑफिसर्स के फ्रेंड आ रखे हैं. ओके, स्पेशली बहुत दूर से न्यूयॉर्क से आए हैं. ओके, और सिर्फ इसी के लिए आए थे. अब ऑफिसर्स मे बेंड द रूल. बियॉन्ड 5 PM ही मे अलाउ हिज फ्रेंड्स टू विजिट. कॉमन पीपल विल रिकॉर्ड वीडियो ऑफ दिस. दे विल रिकॉर्ड वीडियो ऑफ दिस. देखो, हमें मना किया, इनको नहीं. क्यों? क्योंकि कॉमन लोगों को क्या लग रहा है? रूल का वायलेशन. आप समझ लो. बट ऑफिसर इज यूजिंग हिज सो कॉल्ड हिज ओन पावर टू सरपास द रूल, टू गो बियॉन्ड द रूल and get some benefits for his friends. This is unethical, immoral, illegal, whatever you may call it as. Okay, similarly the officer is not supposed to use the car given to him or the bungalow given to him for commercial purposes. Suppose for आपको घर दिया, okay, उस घर के अंदर आपने बिजनेस लगा के स्टार्टअप खोल लिया. दोस्तों के साथ मिलकर हो सकता है, इसमें कोई बड़ी बात नहीं है. ओके, वो स्टार्टअप खोलना अलाउड नहीं है उस घर में, बाहर कहीं पे भी. ये किसने डिसाइड किया? गवर्नमेंट ने. यू आर नॉट गोइंग टू यूज पर्सनल प्रॉपर्टी, सॉरी ऑफिशियल प्रॉपर्टी और पब्लिक प्रॉपर्टी फॉर पर्सनल गेन्स. आप समझ गए ना? देयर इज क्लियर कट सेपरेशन नाउ. सो नाउ वी विल कम टू व्हाट वी कॉल एज कंपैरिजन. राइट डाउन कंपैरिजन बिटवीन patrimonial bureaucracy and legal rational bureaucracy. Comparison between patrimonial bureaucracy and legal rational bureaucracy. First point, unlike patrimonial bureaucrat, comma, the legal rational bureaucrat is appointed on the basis of merit. Is appointed on the basis of merit, skills, and competition. Merit, skills, and competition. Second, unlike patrimonial bureaucrat, the legal rational bureaucrat is not loyal to the master. Rather, he is loyal to the rules, nation, constitution. Okay. Third, unlike patrimonial bureaucrat, the legal rational bureaucrat has rights and privileges. Rights and privileges well protected by civil service rules. Well protected by civil service rules. Okay. And last, unlike patrimonial bureaucrat, comma, there is strict separation between public and private ends. ठीक है, ये system overall. अच्छा, very basic question. In those times when we had this kind of administration, traditional, if any businessman had to set up business, because businessmen require cooperation of bureaucrats. Okay, if businessman had to set up any business, how would it be possible? If he wants to get land for his business, how was it possible? It was possible if he was close to the leader, if he had connection with the leader, if he knew the leader very well, if he had personal connection with the bureaucrats, then it was possible. Today, if any businessman has to establish business, does he have to make personal connection with the bureaucrat or the leader? No. But no. बात सिंपल सी है. By rule, though, he does not have to make connection. Okay. And the idea is very simple. See, if you have to establish business, you have to just offer things at better prices, at competitive prices, and quality goods. If you are doing that, market will automatically allow you to survive. No officer can have this liberty to decide whether you will survive or not. Market will decide whether he will survive or not. Understand? That means वो connection of weak हो गया है. Fine. Anyway, we have described enough on the traditional authority and modern legal action authority. Very briefly, I would like to talk about charismatic authority as well in detail. Okay. Weber says that there is a pattern. Charismatic authority, most of the times, at state level or national level or empire level or civilization level, emerge during the times of crisis only. एक पैटर्न है. लोग को करिश्मा दिखा है किसी में. पहले तो आप ये समझो. People are finding charisma in someone. Gandhi never said I'm Mahatma. People are calling him Mahatma. But what is so special about Gandhi? He is coming during the times of crisis. आप समझ रहे हो? उस टाइम पे लोगों को सच में कोई चाहिए था. Who could help him? Who could help them? Okay. So it was, if not Gandhi, somebody else would have been the Mahatma. वो ट्रांसफर हो जाता महात्मा का किसी और को. Okay. अच्छा, similarly, Buddha also developed during the times of crisis. Can you tell me what was the time? Caste system was at its peak. Fine, but Brahmins had also become corrupt. They had started doing all those things which they were not allowing anyone else to do. Okay, that means they were indulged into sexual activities. They were indulged into non-vegetarianism, alcoholism, all those things which had helped them to maintain their purity. Now the same things are violated by them because now they are drinking alcohol, no longer pure. Indulging in sexual activities, no longer pure. Having non-vegetarian, no longer pure. तो जो pure ही नहीं रहे, तो किस बात की authority? Okay, this was eventually questioned by Buddha. And now people gave support to Buddha. कि हम आपके साथ हैं, बिल्कुल इस चीज में. And who are those people who gave maximum support to Buddha? Vaishyas. Vaishyas were looking for someone who could improve the status, who could improve their status. Their status was third. Okay, Vaishyas बोलते हैं हमारा status improve करा दो please. बुद्ध ने बोला मेरे को बात करते हैं, ठीक है? So Buddha questioned Brahmins कि भाई you have taken number 1 status, but तुम्हारी जो हरकतें हैं वो number 4 वाली लग रही हैं मुझे, ठीक है? तो इसलिए ये मैं उस टाइम के लिए बता रहा हूँ, ऐसा नहीं कि I'm talking about Brahmins in general, उस टाइम के लिए बता रहा हूँ. Okay, so ultimately caste system was questioned by Buddha. The idea of ranking was questioned by Buddha, and eventually what happened was that Buddha was seen as an enlightened man. I mean, he was called as Buddha only after this. Otherwise, he was Siddhartha Gautama. Okay, same was the case with Mahavir Jain. He was labeled as Mahavir by people. His name is not Mahavir, है ना? उनका नाम जो है सिद्धार्थ गौतम है, बुद्ध नहीं. ये सब टाइटल लोग दे रहे हैं. गुरु नानक को गुरु कौन बोल रहे हैं? लोग बोल रहे हैं. Okay, otherwise to his mother he is just Nanak. Okay, and what is so special about Guru Nanak saying? What is so special about Hitler? क्राइसिस का टाइम है. क्या है क्राइसिस? वर्ल्ड वॉर चल रहा है. हिटलर नहीं तो कोई और सही, कोई तो आता हिटलर जैसा ही. Why people were so emotional about Hitler? क्योंकि जरूरत थी किसी लीडर की जो वो जर्मन, आर्यन, प्योर, नाज़ी रेस की जो हेजेमनी है उसको बनवा कर रखे. It was high time that Jews get to know who are Aryans. Okay, so उस टाइम जरूरत था हिटलर जैसे इंसान की. Okay, similarly, what is so special about Mussolini? Same. What was special about Mao Zedong in China? Same. What was so special about Karl Marx? See, Marx also became as charismatic to academicians and later on many protesters and communists as much Gandhi was to many people. So much so that Marxism has today become a religion to many communists. Okay. So कहने की बात यह है कि charismatic leader times of crisis नहीं पैदा होते हैं. Okay, so write down. Weber argues the charismatic leader developed during the times of crisis. During the times of crisis, it is one of the oldest type of authority. It is one of the oldest type of authority. It is often observed that when society is crumbling down, due to its own weight, people turn to a leader. Who is believed by the people to possess supernatural powers. Believed by the people to possess supernatural powers or extraordinary powers. He could be a hero or a tyrant. ये बड़ी important line है. He could be a hero or a tyrant. Why? यहाँ पर there is one more aspect. Yes, exactly. Someone's tyrant is someone else's hero. Someone's terrorist is someone else's freedom fighter. Like Bhagat Singh. Bhagat Singh को अब history about Bipin Chandra in his book he writes revolutionary terrorist. नीचे नाम लिखा Bhagat Singh. When Bipin Chandra is writing Bhagat Singh as terrorist, he is reproducing the same colonial discourse यानी कॉलोनियल की नजर से हिस्ट्री को वो लिखा है, क्योंकि टू कॉलोनियल ही वाज टेररिस्ट, फाइन, बट भगत सिंह वाज फ्रीडम फाइटर टू इंडियंस, ही वाज टेररिस्ट टू ब्रिटिशर्स। सेम लॉजिक टू ओसामा बिन लादेन। नाउ आई एम नॉट सेइंग बोथ आर सेम ना, मैं कह रहा हूं कि लॉजिक सही लगेगा। ओसामा बिन लादेन कईयों के लिए टेररिस्ट है, बट कईयों के लिए फ्रीडम फाइटर भी था। ओके, सेम इज द केस विद गद्दाफी, ओके, और एनी अदर टेररिस्ट, बट ही इज ऑलवेज कैरिज्मेटिक। थर्ड पर्सन, थर्ड फीचर, charismatic authority has power to question the state, the law, the conventions, है ना? He has power to, कोई लॉ इस पे लगता नहीं है, हमने नोटिस किया था ये, इस पे कोई लॉ नहीं लगता, इस पे कोई कस्टम नहीं लग रहा होता। हम यहाँ से लॉ भेजते हैं, उस वापस आ जाता है हमारे ऊपर ही, ऐसे ट्राई करते हैं, वापस हम पे आ जाता है। ओके, कस्टम भेजते हैं, फिर हमारे पास वापस आता है बूमरैंग, हमें लगता है इस पे लगता नहीं है कुछ भी, इन सबसे ऊपर उठा होता है वो आदमी। ओके, जबकि अर्थ में ये हमारे साथ, ठीक है, he has power to question the state, to bend the state in favor of the masses, and that is why he gains more and more support. But firstly, how did he gain this much power to question the state? Because of the support. Support made him what he is, and support made him what he will be. Okay, यानी कि गांधी को गांधी लोगों ने ही बनाया है, अल्टीमेटली बात वही आ गई, लोग ही सब कुछ कर रहे हैं। फाइन, charismatic authority is temporary in nature, and therefore his absence is usually followed by crisis. He is temporary. His absence is usually followed by crisis. Rules are not temporary. Rules are permanent. Traditions are not temporary. They are permanent. But charismatic authority is a temporary person. It is an individual. He comes during the times of crisis, takes the crisis, goes back. When he goes back, for that time, once again crisis comes. जब गांधी जी की डेथ हुई तो लोग एकदम बौखला गए, सब लोग, क्राइसिस का टाइम आ गया। ओके, इंदिरा गांधी, राजीव गांधी. So even if they are not charismatic, जो भी है, लेकिन eventually when charismatic figure dies, people get hyper emotional. Okay, they don't necessarily die with the death of every prime minister or president, but they will definitely cry if they lose their charismatic figure. ठीक है, क्योंकि वो इमोशंस जुड़े थे उनके साथ लोगों के, है ना? लोग सबके डेथ नहीं रोते, स्पेशली लाइक आई रिमेंबर just 3-4 years back, not 3-4, I think 2-3 years back, the Queen died. Okay, the Queen died in England. The whole world was crying. Whole world was crying. Whole world was broadcasting the death of Queen. See the dead body of Queen. Everywhere you would see people were guarded, stationed to welcome the holy dead body of the Queen and let it pass by on the streets. Okay, which means what? People were super emotional on the death of Queen, and despite not having met Queen ever, they are crying for her. What does it mean? Charisma. This is the charisma of a person. उनसे आप मिले भले सिर्फ सोचो उनके बारे में तो भी कुछ हो जाता है, ऐसा होता है, ठीक है? So this is all about charismatic authority, and now the question is, which is very important for people to understand, is when charismatic figure dies, what happens? Okay, he has found a pattern once again here, which is applicable to every human society. He found when charismatic authority dies, on the death of the charismatic authority, two things happen. Either the charisma flies from his body and goes inside somebody else who is seen as the right successor to this body. एक पैटर्न है ह्यूमंस में, ये देखा है हमने, जो charismatic बॉडी खत्म होती है उसमें से charisma निकल जाता है और वो charisma अगली बॉडी में जाता है. This does not happen all the times, but this is what the process is like. Okay, like for example, if Dalai Lama, if he dies, because anyway Dalai Lama is a title, it's not a name, that the Dalai Lama title flies to some other person, then he will be seen as much sacred as the last person was. ये होता है. Okay, Nehru, on his death, the charisma flies to his son, then he becomes the prime minister. On his death, we see his son basically may eventually become whatever we call as the charismatic figure. Okay, but definitely राहुल गांधी जो हम देखते हैं, तो जो राजीव गांधी है बेसिकली, ठीक है, राजीव गांधी से वो करिश्मा गांधी परिवार से है, आप ये सोचो, गांधी परिवार से. So when people are following राहुल गांधी, so it is not just charisma, but traditions are also there. गांधी परिवार, okay, he is not a legal authority for the time being, at least until he gets some position which is well respected by the people according to rules and regulations. Okay, but anyway, charisma flies to the other person. Second thing that happens to a charisma is charisma get a shape of rules and regulations or body. एक पैटर्न है. क्या मतलब है इसका? इसको समझने के लिए we'll have to understand one example. आप कॉलेज में हो, you are in a college, and you have created music club. You were the first one to create music club in your college. Okay. Now, once you are gone from the college, fine. After that, what will happen is that music club will get more and more standardized. It will have some regulations because as long as you were there, music club was running very nicely. Okay. But now you are not going to be there. Who will run the music club? So now rules and regulations will come to run the music club. Independent structure will come to run the music club, which will elect the president of the music club. Because as long as you were there, since you were the initiator, you were by default the president as well. यानी कि rules regulations are there. Think like this: when Guru Nanak died, what happened? His charisma flies to second Guru. When second Guru died, charisma flies to third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, 10th. After 10th, charisma goes to book. Okay. Now Guru Granth Sahib is a Guru. There is a reason why it is called as Guru. Same respect उसको दी जा रही है जो कि गुरु को मिलती थी. Okay. And not just that, we also see Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee coming in. A bureaucratic structure developed who will run the management of the Gurudwaras. As long as we had Guru Nanak, there was no management or authority or independent election to run the Guru Prabandhak Committee. ये सब वर्ड्स नहीं होते थे, याद हुए हैं. That there will be separate election for the Prabandhak Committee, management of the Gurudwara. ठीक है, bureaucratic structure, rules and regulations coming in. Understood? So that means, right now, Weber argues on the death of charismatic authority, humans experience routinization of charisma. Humans experience routinization of charisma. It is a process by which the charisma of a leader either pass on to another or gets traditionalized or gets rationalized or both. Traditionalized or rationalized or both. समझ लेते हैं लाइन का मतलब. If the person died who was charismatic, सिंपल गांधी की बात कर लेते हैं. ओके, गांधी जी डाइड. ओके, आफ्टर हिज डेथ व्हाट हैपेंड? वो करिश्मा तो गया नहीं, उनके बेटे के पास नहीं गया वो करिश्मा. ओके, उनके और अगली जनरेशन पे वो डाइल्यूट हो गया, वो करिश्मा नहीं. अब क्या हुआ? Whatever Gandhi philosophy was, whatever Gandhian philosophy was, it actually got rationalized. Rationalized means it took the form of rules and regulations in the constitution. We have Gandhian principles. आप समझ रहे हो? और we can see party getting formed on the basis of Gandhian ideology. आप समझ रहे हो पैटर्न? गांधी के प्रिंसिपल से पॉलिटिकल पार्टी एस्टैब्लिश हो रही है, गेटिंग रजिस्टर्ड विद इलेक्शन कमीशन अंडर दिस सेक्शन आर्टिकल समथिंग लाइक दिस. रैशनलाइजेशन हो रहा है, मतलब रूल बाउंड, वो उसका करिश्मा रूल का फॉर्म ले रहा है. ओके, सिमिलरली गांधी की जो विचारधारा है, इट आल्सो टुक फॉर्म ऑफ बुक्स. ओके, मेनी पीपल रेड दोस बुक्स. Those books also became part of syllabus of the universities. Okay, it became part of curriculum, rules and regulations. का जो curriculum है उसका part बन गया. Okay, that you will get 50 marks allotted to this book. You have assignment to cover. You have to cover this book. Then you get 50 or 30 marks. ये क्या हो रहा है? गांधी नहीं रहे, पर गांधी की विचारधारा कैसे आ रही है? देखो कैसे कैसे तरीके से पार्टी के फॉर्म में आ रही है, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन के फॉर्म में आ रही है, सिलेबस के फॉर्म में आ रही है. ये क्या चल रहा है? रूटिनाइजेशन ऑफ करिश्मा. अंडरस्टूड दिस? इस प्रोसेस को बोलते हैं रूटिनाइजेशन. थिंक ऑफ इट लाइक दिस. कार्ल मार्क्स डाइड, but Marxist communist philosophy did not die. It took the form of political party. Many people formed communist party. Many people formed socialist party. Not just that, many people also formed communist nation states. स्टेट्स बन गए, राज्य बन गए, रूल बाउंड कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन बन गया, कम्युनिस्ट मैनिफेस्टो बन गया. आप समझ रहे हो? यानी कि रूटिनाइजेशन हो रहा है. वो प्रिंसिपल्स या तो किसी और के पास है, छोटे मार्क्स के पास, छोटा मार्क्स कोई है नहीं. ठीक है, तो अब वो किताब का फॉर्म ले रहा है, पार्टी का फॉर्म ले रहा है, या स्टेट का या कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन का फॉर्म ले रहा है. ये सब फॉर्म लेता जाएगा. दिस प्रोसेस इज कॉल्ड एज रूटिनाइजेशन. आफ्टर द डेथ ऑफ ऑल द 10 gurus, the teachings took form of book, traditional authority. Now the principles of Sikhism are found in the Guru Granth Sahib. Traditions, customs, it has become already now. Okay, and we also see how political parties have formed on the basis of Sikh identity. Shiromani Akali Dal. Okay, so you see all these things. This is nothing less than routinization. Okay, write down example. After the death of individual like Guru Nanak, the charisma was transmitted. The charisma was transmitted to other gurus, or it took the form of customs and traditions, became a book, or those principles became guiding philosophy for the formation of political party, independent state, for the formation of political party, independent state, and Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee, and Gurudwara Prabandhak Committee. Okay, ठीक है. This is all about forms of authority. Now, अब important चीज है. Weber now goes on to study correlation between his study of social action and his study of authority. Okay. ये सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग है. ये बोलते हैं there are 4 types of social action and 3 types of authority. Fine. If I talk about the first form, traditional social action, basically it is an action which is based on traditions and customs. So if we are obeying the kings and queens, if we are obeying the monks and priests, if we are obeying the earls and dukes, which kind of authority are we obeying? Traditional authority. That means traditional social action is correlated with traditional authority. सही बात है? ठीक है. इसको भी मैं लिखवा भी दूंगा. पहले बस ये हम समझ लेते हैं. Okay. Second form of action, effectual social action. Which kind of action is effectual social action? Yes, when you are driven by, moved by, too much moved or too much driven by love, hate, emotions. Okay. In such cases, our action is effectual social action. Okay. When do we get too much moved? When do we start obeying someone? When that person we feel is having heroic qualities. Okay. Is having some extraordinary qualities to help them when they get moved, when they see that person coming. जैसे गोरखपुर में होता है, there is a historian Shahid Amin. He says the making of Mahatma, किताब है, the making of Mahatma. Okay. उसने बताया कि महात्मा कैसे बने थे गांधी. गोरखपुर के लोगों ने बनाया था. When they saw that person coming, महात्मा आ गए, इनका बहुत नाम सुना है. ठीक है. So in that context we can understand People start obeying someone when they are emotionally driven, charged. Okay, and such kind of authorities that are obeyed because of such kind of people are called as charismatic authority. So charismatic authority has some correlation. I'm not talking about cause. There is no causation here. I'm just talking about correlation. Okay. Now, third form of action. Now here, Weber is saying intentionally he is not using the value rational social action. We'll tell the reason later on. Okay. Intentionally he is using the word legal, rational, or what we call as legal action, instrumental social action. Instrumental social action. Which form of social action is this? When our actions are determined by rules, regulations, calculations, machine logic, okay, everything concerned about efficiency, when we are goal-centric, okay, that all such set of actions are called as instrumental action, okay. This form of action has correlation with legal rational authority. You are following the command of IAS officer, IPS officer, Prime Minister, Chief Minister, HOD, Vice Principal, Principal, because you are, यही वाली बॉटल क्यों गिरती है हमेशा? ठीक है, यही वाली बॉटल है, पैटर्न है इसका भी, ठीक है. Anyway, so कहने का तो बड़ा सिंपल है. When we are obeying principal, vice principal, and DM or DC or chief justice or Supreme Court judge or High Court judge, we are actually obeying legal rational authorities. And in this obedience is implied what? Our actions are instrumental. Okay. If we don't obey, क्या होगा? Suppose you did not obey principal in school, क्या होगा? निकाल दिया जाएगा स्कूल से. स्कूल में कंटिन्यू रखना अपने आप को, सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट है हमारा, ठीक है? तो इसलिए सुन लेते हैं प्रिंसिपल की. अगर हमने प्रोफेसर का नहीं सुना कॉलेज में क्या होगा? नंबर और खराब होंगे, फेल हो जाएंगे, तो सुन लेते हैं. सब में इंटरेस्ट है हमारा और रूल्स और रेगुलेशंस भी है. हम अपने इंटरेस्ट के लिए कर रहे हैं. If we don't follow DM or DC, what will happen? We may go to jail. इसलिए डर सही लेकिन कर लेते हैं तो अपने ऊपर आ जाएगी बात. सेल्फ इंटरेस्ट के लिए हम कर रहे हैं. ओके. इफ यू आर ओबिंग ट्रैफिक पुलिस वाला, इफ यू डू नॉट स्टॉप योर कार राइट अवे, आई विल टेक योर कार टू पुलिस स्टेशन. ओके. ईदर सेटल द मैटर हियर इटसेल्फ, ओके, एंड बी रेडी, और अदरवाइज, ओके, आप क्या करोगे? यू सेटल द मैटर. फाइन, बिकॉज़ इफ यू डोंट सेटल देन यू विल नेवर गेट सेटल्ड. ओके. सो इसलिए क्या करोगे? उसी का वहीं पे रफा दफा करके. बट व्हाई डिड यू कंप्लाई? बिकॉज़ ही इज लीगल एक्शन अथॉरिटी, रूल बाउंड. यू हैव वायलेटेड रूल्स, दैट इज व्हाई ही इज हैविंग पावर टू control you. Okay. So instrumental social action is very much visible when we are obeying legal rational authority. Basically he is finding correlations. अब आप सोच रहे हो कि एवरीडे लाइफ के अंदर पैटर्न ढूंढ रहे हैं लोग, हम नहीं सोच सकते ऐसे. ओके. लेकिन कॉमन सेंस वी कैन फाइंड पैटर्न्स लाइक दिस कि हमारे इस टाइप के मोटिवेशंस होते हैं, उसमें टाइपोलॉजी होती है 4. हमारे इस टाइप के ओबेडियंस होते हैं, ओबेडियंस के पीछे 3 टाइपोलॉजी होती है और इनमें कुछ कोरिलेशन. ऐसा हम काम कर रहे हैं, हम तो बोल रहे हैं बस प्रिंसिपल ने बोल दिया चलो, है ना, ऑफिसर ने बोल दिया चलो, बट वी आर नॉट थिंकिंग बियॉन्ड दैट. देयर इज टाइपोलॉजी, देयर इज पैटर्न. एंड he says eventually social action and forms of authority have a correlation with each other. अब इसके बाद आएगा इसका सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट थ्योरी, which is the next one. He says if you look into modernization process, which forms of action are becoming more and more important or more and more visible among humans? This is becoming more and more visible among humans. इसका एग्जांपल आज की डेट में लेट्स टॉक अबाउट शादी, मैरिज. ओके. मैरिज में क्या हो रहा है? Instrumental social action is more and more visible these days. कैसे? You know, पहले क्या होता था? People used to get married in temples. Okay. और there used to be पंडित जी. There used to be कुंडली. Okay. There used to be ग्रह, गुण. Okay. गोत्र, कास्ट, ये सब कैलकुलेशन होती थी पहले. Okay. There used to be शुभ मुहूर्त. These things used to be there. Okay. There used to be consent of the elderly. Right? But these days, all thanks to Shadi.com. Okay. And all thanks to some other websites, that consent of elderly gone. The idea of शुभ मुहूर्त and consultation with पंडित जी gone. People are choosing their partners all by themselves. All on the basis of biodata. और बायोडेटा में क्या लिखा है? कहाँ काम करते हैं, किस शहर से हैं, कहाँ पढ़े लिखे हैं. पहले बायोडेटा ये नहीं होता. पहले क्या होता बायोडेटा? ग्रह, कुंडली, नक्षत्र, दिस वाज द बायोडेटा. हमारा पूरा ओरिएंटेशन चेंज हो गया टू चूज द पार्टनर. ओके. वेन्यू देखो, टेंपल, गुरुद्वारा, ना, मालदीव का जो पानी उसके नीचे, वहाँ शादी करेंगे, वहाँ पे अलग से बनवाएंगे कुछ. ऐसे ऐसे सपने लोग, ठीक है. और फोर्ट है, वहाँ पे जाएंगे, उस फोर्ट पे जाएंगे, उदयपुर जाएंगे, ठीक है, डेस्टिनेशन वेडिंग करेंगे. हाँ वो है, definitely that is there. What I'm trying to tell you is that there is a pattern, there is a shift. So those forms of traditional marriage are still there, but we see a shift now taking place. Okay. That we see event management coming. Okay, planners, wedding planners have emerged. Brahmins, the role of Brahmins are declining. Role of wedding planners is emerging. They will charge you 1 lakh rupees per month services. You will give them, okay, monthly subscription, annual subscription. ये चल रहा है अभी आजकल, ठीक है. तो पूरा आपको देखना पड़ेगा पैटर्न हमारा कहाँ हो रहा है. समझ लो आप इस चीज को. Okay, fine. Our actions are becoming instrumental. Authority structure is becoming legal rational. There is a correlation between the two, and the very process which he eventually calls a new term I'm going to talk about here. He calls the whole process as rationalization. Rationalization of social action, rationalization of authority structure. Okay, तो एक टर्म लिखते हैं, rationalization. Rationalization refers to the process of replacement of traditional and emotional ways of thinking with reason and efficiency. Reason and efficiency and calculation in every sphere of life. Reason, efficiency and calculation in every sphere of life. In other words, thinking and acting like a machine. Thinking and acting like a machine. Okay. हमारे एक्शन में रैशनलाइजेशन हो रहा है, मशीन बेस्ड होते जा रहे हैं. हमारा रीजन, एफिशिएंसी, कैलकुलेशन इंपॉर्टेंट हो गए हैं. हमारी अथॉरिटी स्ट्रक्चर में भी सेम पैटर्न हो रहा है, रैशनलाइजेशन. इमोशंस, ट्रेडिशंस गॉन, रूल्स, रेगुलेशंस have become important, standardized. Understood? Okay. Now, one question we will do before we move forward. Be very prepared to work. This is the last year question. ठीक है. Notes equal to demand. Okay. Question is very straightforward. Notes equal to demand. Okay. Power ko we will define, and then we will define authority. Okay. After briefly defining both, we will talk about differences now. Differences, how can we develop? Okay. Out of the given definition as well. One way is to directly talk about like this. I'll tell the structure. First, let me tell the basic content. Okay. Power and authority. If you make a table like this, at max you can have 3 points. 2 points and one example. I'll tell you about those 2 points and one example as well. Okay. 1 point is definition itself. You define power. You define authority. Second point comes from the definition itself. That power is force. It is application of force because it involves something against the will of other person. Okay, so it implies force, whereas this implies consent. Okay. So basically, power is use of force, authority is use of consent. So you are consenting that. Okay, you are consenting to someone's authority. When it comes to third point, power is mainly exemplified by few cases, like a father dictating kids on career and lifestyle. This is use of power here. Okay. And kids are complying. Kids are unwillfully complying. Unwillfully complying. उनकी मर्जी नहीं है but वो comply कर रहे हैं. Okay. Second case is a father dictating kids on career and lifestyle, but kids willfully comply. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? कंसेंट है. उतना ही डिफरेंस है दोनों में. वहां कंसेंट होता है, वहां फोर्स होता है. ओके. एक ये भी होता है कि पावर इज चांस बेस्ड. ओके. इट इज अ चांस दैट यू मे बी पावरफुल इन दिस सिचुएशन फॉर दिस मिनट फॉर दिस सेकंड. अथॉरिटी इज नॉट चांस. इट इज institutionalized, okay, legitimized, and is almost permanent, except charismatic authority. Power is in the hand of a man. Authority rests with position and man. Man is charismatic, बाकी तो positions हुआ. Father is position, chairman is position. Authority किसमें? Mr. रवि में नहीं है, उस position में है. मतलब authority कुर्सी में होती है. Power individual में होती है, उस कुर्सी में बैठा है. पर वो individual chance based है, वो कुर्सी से उठा, उसकी नहीं सुनी जाएगी. बट कुर्सी में जो भी बैठेगा उसकी सुनी जाएगी. यानी कि authority permanent है, या फिर is having more longevity than the power, which is chance based. ये भी example, ये भी point बना सकते हो आप चाहो तो. Okay, so power is chance based. Chance based and rests on individual. Authority is based on position, except charismatic, which is based on individual. Okay, except charismatic, which is based on individual, and therefore has higher degree of institutionalization than power. Higher degree of institutionalization मतलब कि more established. Okay, the HOD is more established than Mr. Ravi Prakash. Mr. Ravi Prakash may become powerless, but HOD is not powerless. It is always powerful. है ना? तो इसलिए वो वहाँ कुर्सी की बात ज्यादा है. Okay. अच्छा, ये तो हो गए हमारे बेसिक डिफरेंसेस जो हम वहीं से निकाल रहे हैं डेफिनेशन से. बट व्हेन इट कम्स टू वेरियस टाइप्स ऑफ अथॉरिटी, दिस इज द डायरेक्ट. Here you have to just write notes. Now, one important thing that we must understand is how do we begin answer writing to such questions. Okay. When you see the question is power and authority, how to differentiate. So first thing that you can easily write is Max Weber developed interpretative sociology to study experiences of individual and the patterns of command and obedience. Patterns of command and obedience. कि वो experiences में भी patterns ढूंढते हैं. हाँ, everyday life में patterns निकाल रहे हैं. ये बड़ी बात है. Okay. There is a pattern in the way human comply with someone. There is a pattern in the way human force someone. Okay. So he found क्या कहते हैं patterns of authority in everyday life of human societies. He developed differentiation between power and authority before analyzing the patterns. Now you can make that table. Okay. ऐसे करके कुछ ये भी तरीका है. ठीक है. बट अगेन जरूरी नहीं कि आप इसको फॉलो करो. अगर आप डायरेक्ट इस पे आ जाओगे ना, पावर अथॉरिटी, नो हार्म, यू विल स्टिल गेट गुड स्कोर. Okay, because this is impossible to do in 3 hours for every question. This can be done in few questions, but मैं इसलिए बोल रहा हूँ कि जहाँ possible वहाँ जरूर करना है. You know, some questions will actually demand some contextualization. Okay, here this was not required, but I just want to tell you how you can develop contextualization even in seemingly mundane question or basic question. Okay. Anyway, when it comes to conclusion, how do you conclude such question? After writing forms of authority, you will say that Weber, after analyzing the forms of authority, developed a limited generalization. Okay, generalization is that society is experiencing rationalization, which means the domain of traditional authority is declining and the domain of legal rational authority is rising. a limited generalization, okay, which actually became grand later on. बाद में बहुत बड़ी हो गई थी. उस टाइम के लिए यूरोप के लिए बोलते थे वो, सोसाइटी के लिए नहीं बोलते थे. यूरोप, फाइन, ये इतना ही है. तो रैशनलाइजेशन से हम कंक्लूड कर रहे हैं. बात सिंपल सी ये है. ओके, अच्छा, ideal type. Okay. Very important and very simple concept. If you understand this, you can easily assume that Max Weber is done. Okay. इसके बाद कुछ भी नहीं है Max Weber. Now see, अच्छा एक टर्म यूज होता है legitimate domination. There is a term called as legitimate domination. Authority word is also called as legitimate domination. Okay. Legitimate मतलब कि approved. Approved domination authority का होता है, कुर्सी का. Okay. So if you see a word legitimate domination, it is authority. Anyway, ideal type क्या होता है? So Max Weber says that whenever we speak of something, most of the times we assume many things while speaking. We don't question those things. This is something innate to humans. Okay. And most of the times we are not describing the real world or real humans. We are describing something else. वो ऐसा क्यों बोलते हैं? समझ लेते हैं. I'll ask you very basic question. Do we have democracy in India? Yes. अभी आप लोगों ने yes बोला. ठीक है. आप मुझे बताओगे what is democracy? Okay. And how will you tell me what is democracy? By talking about some features. ठीक है ना? So now you tell me what are the features of democracy? पहला है free and fair election. Second is rule of people. Sure. Third, जो भी आप बोलोगे मैं लिख दूंगा. ठीक है. Secularism. आप जो भी बोलोगे मैं लिख दूंगा. मैं पॉलिटिकल क्लास पर बिल्कुल नहीं सोचूंगा कि वहां क्या पढ़ाई करनी है. ठीक है. फोर्थ, हाँ, यूनिवर्सल एडल्ट फ्रेंचाइज और सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर. ऑनलाइन स्टूडेंट्स, any other feature that you want to add here? Rule of law. Rule of law. Freedom of speech. Federalism, independent judiciary. Regular elections. Okay. हो गया, free and fair election हो गया. Equality. और constitutionalism. बीपीएसपी सारे लक्ष्मीकांत के चक्र के करके आप बोलते जाओगे, ये थोड़ा कि सब कुछ डेमोक्रेसी हो जाएगा. ठीक है. देखो, whatever features you have talked about, okay. If I tell you that none of these exist in practice, none of these, okay, कैसे स्टार्ट करते हैं फर्स्ट से. फ्री एंड फेयर इलेक्शन, नॉट एट ऑल. एवरी इलेक्शन इज कंटेस्टेड बाय पीपल हु कैन अफोर्ड इट. इट लुक्स फ्री, साउंड्स फ्री, इट इज नॉट फ्री. फ्री एंड फेयर का मतलब है, फ्री का मतलब क्या होता है? एनीबॉडी कैन कंटेस्ट. अरे नॉट, एनीबॉडी कैन नॉट कंटेस्ट. इट रिक्वायर्स मसल पावर, मनी पावर. समझ रहे हो? तो फ्री कहां से हुआ? हुआ ही नहीं. फेयर, फेयरनेस पे हर साल सवाल उठते हैं. Is it fair? पता नहीं. See, how do you define fair? How do you define fair? See, booth capturing you have heard. Booth capturing. Okay. People are, their hands are twisted. Okay. To such an extent that their fingers can't press any other button except that. Free and fair elections नहीं होता है. People, and if you think it is not just booth capturing, anyway we are free. No, you are still not free. Media will manipulate you. Media will tell you which party is the best party for us. You think it is your choice? No. You were chosen by the media. Okay. To push that button. It is not free and fair. Okay. Every day you read Hindu Indian press, your opinions get changed. Then you decide, now I'll vote for this party. Okay. And then eventually, if you decide, I'll vote for this party, then the other person will come. See, if you vote for us, we will give you. दरवाजा खोल के देखो पीछे क्या क्या है. यूनिवर्सिटी में यही होता है. People are given gifts, different type, cash, drinks. Okay, यूनिवर्सिटी. Is it free and fair? कुछ नहीं है. क्या डेमोक्रेसी है हमारे पास? इस हिसाब से नहीं है. है ही नहीं फिर तो. ठीक है. अच्छा, second rule of people. Well, people do not rule. People are ruled over by select few. Masses do not rule. Masses are ruled by select few. 140 करोड़ के ऊपर सिर्फ 540 बैठे हैं. Is it rule of people? No. Rule on people. ये है reality. Okay. And of course हम बोलेंगे वो 540 तो बट people है ना. हाँ, वो people तो है definitely. But they are not armed people or common people. They are the ones who could afford to contest. They had muscle power, money power, social capital, economic capital, cultural capital. They had lineage. They had network, all sorts of things, which clearly shows that it is not free market for everyone to enter into and contest. Okay. How many of those 540 are men? More than 85% are men. कहाँ से rule of क्या people में सिर्फ men आते हैं? लोकल बॉडी में सेम हाल है. हाँ, तो उसमें बात कर सकते हैं हम. अगर आप पंचायत की बात कर लो, चलो, इन पंचायत में 33% रिजर्वेशन फॉर वुमेन. व्हाट हैपेंस इवेंचुअली? सरपंच पति इज देयर. ओके. द मेल पर्सन इज गोइंग टू फाइनली लेजिस्लेट एंड द वुमेन वाज चोजन बाय द मेल लीडर टू कंटेस्ट इलेक्शन सो दैट with the help of reservation she gets power and then she comes back to perform her daughter-in-law wala role and then he will perform the son-in-law. Okay, who will take charge of the law? Okay, son-in-law और वो daughter-in-law वाला रह जाएगा. क्योंकि ये जो फर्क है समझने की जरूरत है. reservation is there, practice में क्या हो रहा है? We need to understand the practice. This is so model. That does not exist in practice. What exists in practice is different from what we see in the model. That is why I'm saying that most of the time we say India is a democracy, we make notes of it, but we don't think what is happening in practice, right? So we don't really end up with the democracy that we had in our mind in the first place. Third is secularism. Now secularism means what? नो स्पेसिफिक पावर टू, या बेसिकली स्टेट एंड रिलीजन शुड बी सेपरेट. ओके, इसका मतलब ये होता है, ये फिलोसफी समझ लेते हैं वेरी बेसिकली. अर्लियर दे वर नॉट सेपरेट, दे वर वन. Church used to appoint the king. That is why they were one. King used to rule in favor of church. That is why they were one. Church and king was in alliance. That is why they were one. With French secularism coming in, the idea was now they will be separate. चर्च अलग उस तरफ लेफ्ट में और किंग है उधर राइट में. मतलब किंग नहीं मिनिस्टर है राइट में. ओके, चर्च का कोई रोल नहीं मिनिस्टरशिप में. मिनिस्टर की कोई दोस्ती नहीं चर्च से. इसको बोलते हैं सेकुलरिज्म. क्लियर कट सेपरेशन बिटवीन स्टेट एंड चर्च. फाइन. डू वी हैव दिस टुडे in India? No. We clearly see many ministers, big ministers, officers are fulfilling their religious duties openly on television. Okay, openly showing which religion do they have allegiance to. ये नहीं करना चाहिए उनको. तो ये तो उनको कभी नहीं करना चाहिए. They should not even talk about any मंदिर और मस्जिद. Okay, and in every politics there is a role of religion. Again, Hindu-Muslim card is played, which clearly shows there is no state separation. In fact, both are one in India. Okay, so ये भी क्या है, किताबी बात है. असली में तो है नहीं. Fourth, universal adult franchise. What does it mean? It means that every person has right to vote, right? Every person has right to vote, definitely. But the question is, how many people are voting? How many people are voting? 50, 60%, right? Now the question is, out of these 60, how many are men? 85, more than 85%. Eventually, 60% of population is voting. Okay. Out of that 60%, 85% or more than that are men, which also involves caste calculation. Which men are going to be the voters more? Because the caste leaders are there. Their caste leaders are there. Okay. Eventually, what happens is, in the name of universal adult franchise, we see franchise of select few. We never see universal adult franchise. Nobody is chosen by universal adult franchise. Everybody is chosen by vote bank, which is select franchise of caste, select franchise of sex, select franchise of region. So that is select franchise that we see in practice. Okay. Muscle power is already there. Money power also molds you. If you want to practice your right to vote, you will not be allowed. Okay. You should have independence to choose which leader you want in power, but that independence will be snatched away from you because of the muscle and money power, booth capturing. Okay. Gunda Raj, whatever we may call it as. Okay. Separation of power. We really don't see separation of power. How do we not see that? Because we clearly know that judiciary oversteps many a times. Parliament also oversteps. Judicial के overstep को क्या बोलते हैं? Activism, है ना? Judicial activism. Fine. Overreach. ये सब हमने terms use किए हैं. यानी separation तो नहीं है power का, clear cut. कोई ना कोई इसके territory में जाए. Parliament also has power to what we call as impede the powers of judiciary. Okay. We have 9 schedule. उसके अंदर कुछ डाल दिया, power खत्म judiciary की. ठीक है. Parliament also has quasi judicial functions. Okay. So that clearly shows clear cut separation तो नहीं है. ये तो एक model है. Okay. When it comes to freedom of speech, we know very well how speech is restricted. Okay. How if you choose to put something out on Twitter, okay, your handle may no longer exist. Okay, your channel may no longer exist. Fine. So ultimately you'll be forced to switch off the channel or the handle, whatever it is. Freedom of speech. No. Independent judiciary. And see, the issue is when it comes to independence of judiciary. Okay. Many times it is believed that technically independence of judiciary should mean that there should not be any role of what we call as parliament or ministers or officers in selection of judicial officers or judges. Okay. There should be separate body for that. Okay. So far we don't have that body as of yet. अभी तक तो रोल चल रहा है. पार्लियामेंट का कहीं रोल होता है. माना जाता है कि एक हद तक एक कमेटी बनती है जहाँ पे कुछ ऑफिसर होंगे और कुछ जज के जुडिशरी साइड के कुछ लोग होंगे, who will be deciding which person should be elected as judge. Okay. Now इंडिपेंडेंट जुडिशरी जो है ना, इसमें इसलिए एक इशू आता है बोलने में कि कभी कभी देखा गया है people who are very close to someone, okay, who have political bosses, okay, political backing, they get promotion faster. Okay, they get to be the judge of the district, of the state, at the national level, something like this. Okay, equality. When it comes to equality, again, this does not exist really. Okay, why it does not exist? Because see, equality is just an idea. In practice, all of us are not equal. There is an equality in practice. So there is a very popular person called as Andre Bete. I'll teach you Andre Bete paper 2. He says that equality is something that we cherish in public space. Inequality is something that we practice in private space. इसका तो क्या हुआ? इक्वालिटी सिर्फ एक सेमिनार और कॉन्फ्रेंसेस के लिए एक डिस्कशन का टॉपिक है. असल जिंदगी में हर रोज इनइक्वालिटी प्रैक्टिस होती है. घर में हो जाती है. मम्मी पापा बड़े और छोटे भाई के बीच में इनइक्वालिटी करते हैं. होती है कि नहीं होती? घर में. ठीक है. इनइक्वालिटी एग्जिस्ट बिटवीन मम्मी एंड पापा आल्सो. बिटवीन नानी एंड मम्मी. ओके. इनइक्वालिटी एग्जिस्ट बिटवीन छोटा भाई बड़ा भाई. इनइक्वालिटी एग्जिस्ट बिटवीन व्हाट वी कॉल एज मैन एंड वुमन. Between what we call as a homosexual and heterosexual. Okay. We see education free for everyone. Homosexuals don't get it easily. They will face discrimination, sexism. Okay. Similarly, when it comes to regionalism, okay, that our caste is supreme than their caste. Again, this shows there is no equality. When it comes to religious affairs, Hindu Muslims, we see inequality only in terms of distribution of resources in education and politics. Over-representation of one group over another. This shows inequality in practice. In higher education, we see over-representation of men. In workplace, we see glass ceiling. So inequality तो हर रोज की लाइफ में दिखता है. Why inequality नहीं है इधर? Constitutionalism. Now what is the meaning of constitutionalism? कि we are following constitutional morality. Okay. Now what is the meaning of constitutional morality? कि irrespective of whatever people say, if that thing, whatever we are going to give judgment on, is within the confines of constitution, then we are right and we are going completely legal. That is what we call as constitutional morality. कि आप जनता की ना सुनो, constitution की सुनो. कौन सुने? जजेस. जजेस जनता की ना सुने, मीडिया की ना सुने, कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन की सुने. अगर कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन उसको ये बोल रहा है घर पे कि कर दे तो जज को कर देना चाहिए. तो कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन morality वो हुआ. बट होता ये नहीं है. जजेस get influenced by public opinion, media. Ultimately they say let collective consciousness of the people evolve. Only then we can make judgment on uniform civil code. Okay. ऐसा नहीं है कि कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन तो बोलता है तो भाई यूनिफॉर्म सिविल कोड, बट नहीं कर रहे वो क्योंकि मीडिया और पब्लिक रेडी नहीं है. तो इसका मतलब कॉन्स्टिट्यूशन morality एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता. जब कुछ एग्जिस्ट नहीं करता तो डेमोक्रेसी कैसे एग्जिस्ट कर रही है? इसका मतलब क्या हुआ कि ये सिर्फ एक मॉडल है. Practice is always going to be different, and this is something that Max Weber highlights. Max Weber says everything that is spoken by people is just a model. None of that exists in practice. टॉपर ये बोलते हैं, वो टॉपर कहीं है नहीं. उस टॉपर के फीचर मैं आपसे पूछूंगा, उस टॉपर के फीचर बताओ, वो टॉपर मिलेगा नहीं कहीं पे भी. आप टॉपर के फीचर बताओ मुझे 4-5. Tell me features of topper. Only 4-5. 12 hours a day. No social media. हाँ? Resilience. और हाँ? Strategy. So toppers have schedule of 12 hours a day. They don't have social media account. They have strong resilience. They have strategy. देखो 12 hours a day. क्या आगे आप ये तो बताओगे ना कितने दिनों तक? कितने दिनों तक 12 hours a day? If I follow 12 hours a day for 2 days, मेरा थर्ड और फोर्थ डे सोने में जाएगा सिर्फ. प्रैक्टिस तो ये है, सच्चाई यही है. If I follow 12 hours a day for 2 days, कोई बड़ी बात नहीं, किताब खोल के बस घंटे देखने मुझे. 12 हो गए. अरे रीडिंग और स्टडीइंग में कुछ फर्क है कि नहीं? They would say I read for 12 hours. अरे how much hours did you study for? है ना? I can read anything for 18 hours. उससे क्या होगा? स्टडी तो मेरी 2 घंटे में खत्म है, उसके बाद कुछ नहीं करना दिमाग में. Okay, I will have to take break. It is humanly impossible that you keep reading and thinking that you are studying. Okay, so 12 hours a day तो ये तो गया. No social media. भाई how did you get the resources? How did you get the PDF? How did you communicate with your friends? Okay, or other people that you require these resources, videos, coaching videos, or whatever we call as books. Social media, you are there on WhatsApp as well. Okay, Instagram, you keep checking in between. Okay, so it is not advisable for you to say that there is no social media. Okay, resilience. For how many days you can be resilient? एक दिन, 2 दिन, 1 महीना, 2 महीना टूटेगा ना, रेजिलियंस टूटेगा. इंसान है, पहले इंसान है, बाद में टॉपर है. पहले इंसान है. ओके, इंसान का रेजिलियंस. रेजिलियंस का मतलब क्या होता है? व्हाट इज द मीनिंग ऑफ रेजिलियंस? या फाइटिंग. बेसिकली, even if you are down a day, you will recover immediately. Okay, you will not let that boredom or lack of motivation affect you. You will be beyond these words. You don't require any motivation video. You don't require any support. You are going to stand still, irrespective of whatever the condition may be. अरे ऐसा कौन महापुरुष है? ऐसा कोई महापुरुष ही नहीं है. रेजिलियंस सब में इतनी कहाँ होती है? ये तो मैक्सिमम 3 दिन चल जाएगा, 4 दिन, 5 दिन वापस देखनी पड़ेगी कोई वीडियो, या दीवार पे कोई कोट लगाना ही पड़ेगा, या फिर अपने नाम क्या आईएएस लिखना पड़ेगा. एक रजिस्टर खरीदेंगे और वहाँ पे आईएएस फाइल लिख देंगे अपने नाम क्या, ताकि इसको देख के मोटिवेट रहे. कम से कम रेजिलियंस नहीं होती है. और वो आईएएस भी लिखा हुआ कितनी देर तक मोटिवेट करेगा? वो भी बहुत देर तक नहीं करेगा. रेजिलियंस एक ख्याल है, ठीक है, हाल कुछ और है. ये ख्याल है, ठीक है. लास्ट इज स्ट्रेटेजी. सबके पास है स्ट्रेटेजी, सबके पास है. वो राइट थी या नहीं है तो बाद में बदलता है, पर स्ट्रेटेजी सबके पास है. ओके, जिसका हो गया उसकी सही थी, जिसका नहीं हुआ उसकी बाद में सही हो जाएगी. देयर इज नो यूनिवर्सल स्ट्रेटेजी. देयर आर 1000 टॉपर्स, 1000 स्ट्रेटेजीज. जितनी वीडियोस उतनी स्ट्रेटेजीज. इस साल की नहीं, पिछले साल की भी है. सर स्ट्रेटेजी बताओ, पहले पिछले साल वालों की देख लेते हैं, उसके पिछले साल वालों की देख लेते हैं, क्योंकि क्या है कि देयर इज वन टू इट. सो अल्टीमेटली व्हाट वी थिंक ऑफ टॉपर is just a model. In reality, we don't see any topper like that. Understood? Okay. So, same is the case with other things which we will understand tomorrow. But with this theory, you will understand one thing, that in social world or in natural world, in both the worlds, natural scientists only describe model of nature. Social scientists only describe model of social world. None of the models actually describe the true nature or true social world. Right? कुछ यूनिवर्स का भी मॉडल बना रखा है साइंटिस्ट ने. क्या यूनिवर्स वैसा ही है? ना, वो तो अभी जानना बाकी है कि कैसा है. कुछ मॉडल बना रखा है टॉपर्स का भी, क्या टॉपर्स ऐसी हैं ना, वो जानना बाकी है वो कैसे कैसे हैं. ओके, इसका मतलब ये है कि व्हाट एट मैक्स वी कैन डू इज टू हैव अ मॉडल ऑफ द सोशल वर्ल्ड. नथिंग यूनिवर्सल जनरल स्टेटमेंट कैन बी डेवलप्ड ऑन नेचर और ऑन द सोशल वर्ल्ड. अंडरस्टूड? फाइनल सी वाइज टुमारो देन.